everybody, and welcome. I am the Shy Hat, and this is HackerFrogs After School. We're going to be doing our Linux OS Operations workshop today. Today is Linux OS Operations Part 5. This is the final workshop in the Linux OS Operations course. So we have a few more things to learn about today. I hope everybody is having fun learning Linux commands with us during this course. Alright, so before we get underway, let's take a look at a summary of what we learned in the last Linux OS Operations workshop. Hey there, HackerFrogs. This is the 5th intro to Linux OS Operations workshop. In the previous workshop, we learned about the following Linux commands. We learned about the help flag. The -- help flag can be used as part of any command to return a relatively brief explanation as to how to use the command. We also learned about the cp command, the copy command. This command copies files from one directory to another. The first argument is the file to be copied, and the second argument is the directory the file is to be copied to. The copy command is a very useful command for moving files from one directory to another. GX000 says, "What's up, GX000? Nice to see that you've recovered from the convention that we did yesterday over at B-Sides Vancouver. And a special shout out to GX000 for being my CTF captain, as it might have been. He says that he's still tired because the after party over at B-Sides looked like it was pretty wild. It was certainly really loud down there. Okay, so anyways, the next command that we learned was the mv move command. It's used in a very similar fashion to the cp command, except the original file will not remain in its original directory. This command is also used for modifying the names of files. We also talked a little bit about Linux file permissions. So each file in a Linux file system has different read, write, and execute permissions, indicated by these letters right here when you use the ls command with the L flag. R stands for read, W stands for write, and X stands for execute. So these permissions depend on whether a user is 1, the file owner, 2, part of a certain group, or 3, any other user. So the first 3 letters over here are for the owner of the file, and you can tell who the owner of the file is from the first username listed over here. The second set of permissions is for the group to which the file belongs. And you can tell the group permissions over at the second name over here. And then the third list of file permissions, the last 3 letters over here, are for all of the other users. All right, we also talked about some noteworthy Linux file directories. So in a standard Linux distribution, there are going to be a number of different directories that are common to all of them. For example, the etc directory where system files and user passwords are stored, the var directory where log files and database files are stored, the root directory, which is the home directory for the root user, the super user, typically the folder with the most access, the tmp directory where all files are deleted on a regular basis. So the tmp directory is a bit unusual in the Linux file system because almost all users are able to write files to the temporary directory, the tmp directory. And there's also the home directory where individual user account files are stored. So if you have a user account on a Linux system, the home directory is usually where you're going to keep all of your files. All right, so what we're going to do now is we're going to access a Linux console. So we're going to be using a web-based Linux console over at bellr.org, and this is called JS Linux. Adil V7 says frog to you too, Adil V7. Okay, so I'm going to leave the link for the JS Linux web-based Linux distribution that we're going to be using in this session in the chat. So if you're able to access that, you're going to see something like this over here. Welcome to Fedora 33. This is a Fedora distribution of Linux, but it functions very similarly to any other distribution of Linux, and we're going to be using this to demonstrate some of the Linux commands that we're going to be learning today. Okay, so while we're waiting for everybody to get on the same page and access the web-based Linux over here, I'm going to run a commercial ad, because on Twitch I have to run a commercial ad every once in a while, otherwise they pop up randomly, which is something we don't like. But while we're running the ad and waiting for everybody to access the JS Linux, I would ask everybody in chat right now to tell us what your group affiliation is with, whether or not you're with the Black Girls Hack group or with the Women's Society of Cyberjitsu group. Please tell us in chat, because we're just going to take a minute to wait for everybody to catch up and to play an ad. But thank you very much for everybody for showing up today. We love to teach everybody in chat, and we're going to be continuing week after week with different courses that are geared towards beginners cybersecurity students. Next week we're going to be starting our Python programming course. So if you've never learned Python programming before, it's a good opportunity to learn about the Python programming language in a very beginner-friendly manner. Okay, so let's move on then. So the first thing we're going to learn is about terminal text editors. So from time to time, we're going to need to write new files or modify existing ones inside of Linux. And to do so, we're going to need to use Linux text editors. So text editors, let's learn about Linux terminal text editors. Two commonly installed text editors on Linux systems are Nano and Vim. So these are the two most common text editors we find on Linux. If you go to your JS Linux web console over here, and you type in the Nano command, then you're going to gain access to the Nano text editor. Okay, so inside of the Nano text editor, at the bottom over here, you see a bunch of commands over here, and these can all be accessed through the use of the control key and whatever letter is over here. So if we want to get help, we can do Control G. If we want to write out Control O, for example, let's try exiting. That's going to be Control X. So if we do Control X inside of Nano, we're going to exit out of the Nano text editor, but we can get back into the editor by typing in Nano again. If we want to create a file using Nano, let me clear this, we can just type Nano and then the name of the file we want to create. So if I wanted to create test.txt, we could do nano test.txt, and that's going to bring us to the Nano text editor again, except that we have our title over here, our file name. So we can so inside the Nano text editor, you can basically type whatever you want. This is an example sentence. How do you spell sentence again? Sentence. I'm writing in the Nano text editor. Okay, so after we've written this, we can save this by trying to exit out of this exit out of the editor. And remember, the shortcut for exiting out of the editor is Control X. So when you when you hit the Control X keyboard shortcut, it's going to ask you if you want to save the modified buffer. So modified buffer is basically whatever you modified within the document. So you can type Y for yes, and then it's going to ask you for a file name to write to. Most of the time, you don't need to modify this. You just hit enter, and that's going to create your file. So if you were to, I'm going to clear to go back up to the top. So we see inside of the directory we have our test.txt file that we created using nano. And if you wanted to try to access it, you could use the cat command. And you see that whatever we wrote inside of the nano text editor is whatever is in the test.txt file over here. So go ahead and try that out yourself. Remember, when you go inside of the nano text editor, the most important command you need to know is the Control X command to let you exit the program. But aside from that, nano is a very user-friendly text editor, and it's actually my preferred text editor when I'm working inside of Linux. So, but let's learn about the other text editor. So we just learned about the nano text editor over here, and the other text editor is the Vim text editor. So Vim is a more complicated text editor, but it is favored by Linux power users who can make use of its advanced features. Personally, I never really learned how to use Vim, but I do know how to use the very basic functions of Vim. So let's learn together. Before we move on, let's just read this block of text over here. In the Vim text editor, before you can type anything, you have to type I. To save a file, you have to hit escape, then type :WQ. So this is basically all you need to, the thing that you have to remember most about using the Vim text editor. So let's try that out. So we go to JS Linux, and I'm going to go back up to the top. So I'm going to create a new file using Vim. So Vim and then vim.txt. This is the file that we're going to create. Okay, so this brings us to the Vim text editor. Inside of the Vim text editor, we can't type anything until we hit the I button. So when we hit the I button, we're going to go to what is called interactive mode inside of Vim. And after that, you can type whatever you want. I'm typing in the Vim text editor. It's an alternative to using the nano text editor. Okay, so after we finish typing what we want to type inside of Vim, what we need to do is we need to type escape. We need to hit the escape key to exit from the insert mode. And we know that we're in insert mode because the word insert is down over here at in the corner. So what we need to do is type escape, and then we get back to the I'm not sure what this mode is called. It's probably called the editing mode or something like that. And to save the file, you have to type : and then WQ. WQ is going to let us save the file and then quit. W stands for write, and then Q stands for quit. So :WQ is going to save the file and quit. And then after that, when you take a look at what is in this directory, you see that vim.txt is inside the directory. So we can access we can read whatever is in the file we created using the Vim text editor with cat. Okay, and this is what we wrote inside the Vim text editor. So we can go back into the file by using Vim again. So vim.txt. Ideal v7 says no THM today. the problem with THM is that the module that I was previously using to teach Linux inside of TryHackMe, it's no longer free for new users. So people with new user accounts can't access that one for free. So I'm going to be teaching using JS Linux, but don't worry. I'm going to teach you basically the same stuff that you would have been learning if we took a look at the THM module. Okay, so we can go back into the file using Vim, and we see that we see what we previously created using Vim, and of course from here, first we have to type I to get back into insert mode before we can start editing. So I'm adding new content to this file now, and then after we finished modifying our file, we have to hit the escape key one more time, and then we have to do :WQ. So you just have to remember that you have to hit the I button to start typing inside of Vim, and then when you're finished, hit the escape key and then :WQ to save out the file. So we see that the modifications have been saved to this file. All right. And next, we're going to be, if you have any questions, if you have any other questions about terminal text editors like Nano and Vim, please type in the chat and I'll try to answer your questions as best I can. But there's one other text editor that we can talk about, and that's the VI text editor. So VI is the predecessor to the Vim text editor. And you'll find the VI text editor on very old versions of Linux that don't have newer text editors like Nano and Vim installed. But what you have to understand if you only have the VI text editor is that its basic function is very similar to Vim. So if you ever find yourself in a situation where you're using a very old version of Linux and the only text editor you have is VI, you just have to remember that it functions very similarly to Vim. Okay, so next, let's talk about downloading files. So downloading public files is very easy with wget. So all we need is the link to the file. So I'm going to demonstrate this with my version of Kali Linux that I'm running right now, because the JS Linux virtual machine, the JS Linux machines, they're not really internet accessible, as in you can't really download files from the internet to these machines. So if we would try to wget something, maybe google.com, robots.txt. We could try to download this, but it's not going to resolve. Oh wait, is it? Is it resolving? It says it moved permanently. Okay, now we're connected. Oh, this is the first time this has worked for me. Okay, so you could all try doing this as well. So I'm going to copy this command and I'll leave it in the chat. I learn some new stuff every day. Okay, so I'm gonna. I'll just type the command in chat for everybody. So it's wget google.com/robots.txt. And if you want to take a look at robots.txt, robots.txt is a file that you can put on web servers that lets search engines know what pages that they can and cannot index, basically record for their search engines. So after we use the wget command, we see that the robots.txt file has been saved to our system. So if we were to cat that out using the cat command to read the file, we see that these are all the files, the directories that that Google wants and does not want to be indexed by search engine robots. So all of these right here, and we very conveniently downloaded this file to our console using the wget command. So wget is a very easy program to use. It's just wget and then the URL that leads to the file. So if I were to demonstrate with my Kali Linux over here, so I've got my version of Kali Linux over here. If anybody is interested in learning how to download and create their own Kali Linux virtual machine, please type in chat and let me know that you're interested. Maybe we can do that at the end of today's session. Okay, so if I want to wget some google.com robots.txt, this is how we would do it. So we just need wget and then the URL that leads to the file, and then we get our file in our present working directory. Okay, so that was the wget command, and let's move on to the next part of today's session. We're going to talk about process management. So ongoing programs running on Linux are called processes. So processes, so computers are running all sorts of processes on the system at all times. They're basically little programs that are running in the background, and most of the time we don't need to interact with them. The current processes on the system can be retrieved using the ps command, ps for process. So inside of JS Linux, if we wanted to see what processes are running, we could use psaux. So this is a typical command that we would do to see all of the processes running on the system. So we see here that most of these processes are being used by what are they called again? Services, by different services on the system, but a few of them are being used by programs. For instance, there's this one over here /bin/sh, and this one over here, which is what the command that we're running right now, which is psaux. And we can see all sorts of different stats when we use the ps command. The user that we see the user that started the command. In most cases here, it's root, which is the super user. And then we see the process ID, the PID over here. So the PID is an important thing to take note of if you want to interact with any of these processes. And then a bunch of other statistics over here as well. So the next thing I'm going to teach you is the kill command. So if we know the process ID of a process, we can remove it with the kill command. So it seems really violent, but this is the command we use to shut down processes. So if, for example, we see these different processes over here, and we wanted to stop one of these processes, we just need to use the kill command along with the process ID. So let me demonstrate inside of JS Linux over here. So for example, I'm going to run a command that's going to take quite a while to finish running. I'm going to run a find command, and I'm going to look for a file with the name the shy hat. So this doesn't exist, and we're looking in the entire file system over here. And I'm going to run this with the ampersand in order to be able to use the console after I've started running this program. So I'm going to run this, and when we run it, it tells us that this is the process ID number that was created when we ran the command. So if we use the ps command to take a look at what is running right now, we see that in the list over here, that our find command is one of the commands in the list. So if we wanted to stop this command, we would use the kill command along with the PID number. In this case, it's 450. So that would be kill and then 450. And after that, we can run the PS command again. And we see that 450, our find command, is no longer in the list, meaning that it's been stopped. Okay, so at this point, we're going to take another little break, and so during the break, if you could tell to the people in chat, if you could tell me which organization you're with, whether or not it is Black Girls Hack or Women's Society for Cyber Jitsu, please tell us in the chat. Okay, so one more time, to the people in the chat, if you're with either Black Girls Hack or with Women's Society of Cyber Jitsu, please type in which organization you're with in the chat, because those organizations like it when I'm able to provide kind of an attendance sheet and say which users from which organization attended the sessions. Thank you very much. Okay, so we're going to be checking if a program exists with the which command. So the next command that we're going to be talking about is the which command, which can be checked which can be used to check where a program is located. If there's no output, it's possible that this program is not installed. So if we take a look at JS Linux and we wanted to know where the Python command is. So Python is the programming language. So which Python, it would tell us that it is in the /bin/Python directory. And maybe if we were to check where the cat command is, we could do which cat, and that's going to tell us where the cat command is inside of the file system. So it tells us that it's in bin/bin/cat. So we just need to remember that the which command tells us where a program is, where an installed program is stored. It is not a substitute for the find command, which can be used for any program, not just which can be used for any file, not just installed programs. Okay, so next, we're going to be talking about installing new programs. So although different Linux distros use different methods of installing programs, Debian-based distributions like Ubuntu and Kali Linux use the apt program to install new programs. So basically, the installation of new programs on Linux is usually a very painless process. For example, if we wanted to install the Onion router, otherwise known as Tor, we could use apt install Tor over here. So I'll demonstrate this over on my own Linux distribution over here. So I'm using Kali Linux over here. So if I wanted to install Tor on my system, this is the command I would use. the apt command to install a new program. So it's apt install tor. This particular command has to be used with the sudo command, which is because installing new programs isn't allowed by any other user except for the root user. So if I were to do this, I would need to provide the password for my user, and then it would get all the information for installing this particular program, and then it would tell me that after this operation, this amount of additional space is going to be used on the hard disk, and then it's going to ask me to confirm whether or not I want to install the program. So I do yes, and it's going to get all the files that are required to install the program, and then after that, this program is going to be installed on my system. So this isn't something that we can demonstrate on the JS Linux machines over here, because the JS Linux machines don't allow us to install anything on these systems over here, unfortunately. Basically, the only way you can install programs on a Linux system is if you have complete access to the machine. And unfortunately, for these machines, we don't have complete access, so we can't install new programs on these systems. But the basic operation of installing new programs is very easy on Linux, and it's probably a lot less complicated than installing new programs on Mac OS or on Windows. Okay, so next, let's talk about networking commands. So the first networking command we're going to take a look at is the ifconfig command over here. So the ifconfig command is used to return networking information for the system, including its IP address and MAC address. So this we can demonstrate on JS Linux. Over here, we can do the typical ifconfig command, and this is going to give us the some networking configuration information about our system over here. So after we run the command over here, we see our networking interface over here, ETH0, sometimes called ETH0, and then our IP address over here, which is, in my case, is 10.5.126.101. So this is useful when you want to do some networking configurations, and for people who are going into cybersecurity, this kind of information is going to be quite valuable when you're interacting with your Linux systems. Okay, so next. Oh, we can also get the MAC address for the networking interfaces over here as well. So if you're doing networking, MAC addresses are this value over here, and this is a unique identifier for the network interface right here. Okay, so the next thing we're going to do is we're going to create a simple HTTP server on our JS Linux machine over here. So if we wanted to serve some files over the internet, we can use this Python module over here called http.server, and this is going to serve all of the files inside of our present working directory onto the internet on a certain port. In this case, it's port, by default, it's going to be port 8000 over here. So we can use Python to serve files to the internet with the simple HTTP server module, although it should be confined to local network use. So you can use this module, but it's not something you should expose to the open internet because it's not extremely secure. So let's demonstrate this. So I don't think this is going to work for JS Linux, but let's test to see if it works. Okay, so we've got Python and then -m http.server server, and this is not going to work because they probably locked down this kind of functionality on these. Oh, is it working? That's kind of special. Okay, so we're now serving all the files in the current directory on port 8000 of this machine over here. So actually, I'm going to quit out of this, and I'm going to run this again with the ampersand so that we can still use the console while this command is running. So we're going to run it again, and we see that this is now process number 482, and we're going to take a look at we're going to check for the open port with the next command that we're going to learn right now. So the next command that we're going to learn is called netstat. Okay, so netstat is a command that can be used to retrieve network connections. So if we use the netstat command, we can see what networking ports are listening and or currently connected on our machine over here. For example, but we usually need to use netstat with a bunch of different flags. In this case, it's the TULPN. I call it tulpin. So let's do that inside of JS Linux. So we're going to run netstat, and then with the -tulpin flags over here. And we see here that there are 2 ports that are open on our system over here. There's port 8000, which is the port that we ran with Python, and there's port 68 over here. And I'm not sure what that is, but it is open. Okay, interesting. All right, so that is the netstat command. Netstat is a command you use a lot when you do network hacking, and we're going to be doing a network hacking course a little bit later with the HackerFrogs program. So stay tuned for that. All right, so we're going to cover the most important, one of the most important commands on the Linux system, and this is the sudo command. I'm sure you've all heard of the sudo command before. It's the super command. The sudo command, which I've been told stands for super user do. It can be added to any other command, and it allows for the command to be executed in the context of the root user. So sudo can also be used to work in the context of other users, but most of the time we use sudo, we're going to be running it in the context of the root user, which is the super user. Okay, so let's learn how to use sudo. So the thing is about sudo is that it needs to be used whenever we try to access or modify system files or directories. So in our case, I'm going to demonstrate this on my Kali Linux machine because the way the JS Linux machines are set up, we run as the root user, so we don't need to use sudo. So let me demonstrate on my Kali Linux machine, just a second. Okay, so if we wanted to access any sensitive files on the system, for example, if I wanted to access this file over here, which has all of the password hashes for different users on the system. If I wanted to access this, and I'm not the root user, it says permission denied, because this file over here is owned by root, and non-root users are not able to read it. But because the current user that I'm using right now is an admin user, I can use sudo. So if I were to use sudo and I were to run the same command, then I would be able to read this file. So the thing here is that the shadow file over here is going to show different user accounts and their password hashes and a bunch of other information as well. So these are all of the service user accounts over here, but the only user who has a password is the Kali user in this case. So Kali is the default user on Kali Linux, and Kali is also the Kali user account is also an admin user account, and this is the password hash for the Kali user, the Kali user's password hash right here. This is not the password for this particular user. It is the hashed value of the password, and we're not able to access this sensitive file unless we use the sudo command. So let's learn a little bit more about sudo. So sudo needs to be used whenever we try to access or modify system files or directories. Okay? So generally only system administrator accounts should be allowed to use sudo with all commands. So if we were to do sudo-l, we could get some information about which commands we can run as sudo with our current user account. So if we were to do it instead of JS Linux, sudo-l, is this going to give us some information? It's thinking. So the user root may run the following commands on the system over here, all. So basically, the root user can use sudo with every command in the context, in every command in all directories on this particular system. But that's it's not really the sudo command isn't useful when you're running as the root user, because the root user has unrestricted access to all of the directories and files on the Linux system. But if I were to take a look at my Kali Linux instance over here, so the Kali user on the Kali Linux machine over here is an administrator account. So we're able to use sudo with on all directories and all files on the system. So that's the reason why administrators who can run sudo on every file and every directory inside of a Linux system don't run as the root user is because the root user, if you're running as the root user on a Linux system, there is the possibility that you can modify or delete files by accident, and it's much better if you work in the context of an admin user who has to very conscientiously interact with sensitive files or directories in order to make modifications to them. Okay, so let's go back. Some systems have users who are able to use sudo with a very specific command for some reason or another. So there are specialized cases on BreakSec, rated the channel with 5 viewers. Well, welcome very much. Welcome raiders to the channel. What we're doing right now is we're talking about some Linux OS commands. This is the last workshop for the Linux OS operations workshop with the HackerFrogs program, and we're talking about the sudo command. Welcome, welcome. All right, thank you for following Digital Warhead, and thank you very much to BreakSet for the raid. So some systems have users who are able to use sudo with a specific command for some reason or another. There are special use cases where you're able to configure it so that users can use sudo with some commands but not others. And thank you for following IT professional. Thank you very much. Okay, so if you ever try to run a command as a regular user and you see the permission denied message. So if we were to try to read this sensitive file over here, and we see permission denied, that's because we're trying to interact with a sensitive file or directory, which is usually owned by root, and we have to remember why we're using sudo to do stuff. You can usually retry that command with sudo to execute a directory, to execute it successfully. If we need to use sudo, we should always try to understand why we need to use it. So this command right here, rm-rf/, this is kind of a joke or meme command that is often asked by Digital Word asks, is it sudo or do JK? Sometimes I hear it pronounced as sudo, or sometimes I hear people say sudo. So I think either pronunciation is fine. But this is a meme command that people try to trick people into running on Linux all the time. Usually they try to ask them to run sudo rm-rf/, and this is going to delete your entire file system. Digital Warhead says, sorry, sudo. Well, thank you very much. All right, so, but remember, if you were to add sudo to this command right here, you would delete your entire file system, and that is the power of the sudo command. All right, so since it means we're interacting with sensitive files or directories. All right, so this is the end of this particular workshop right now. If you are here with either the Black Girls Hack organization or the Women's Society for Cyberjitsu organization, I have a survey for you all to fill out. Hold on while I get the links to those. So if you're with Black Girls Hack, please use this survey link right here. And if you're with Women's Society of Cyberjitsu, please use this link right here. Please let them know if I'm doing a good job, and if you learned some, if you're able to learn easily with my sessions over here. If not, let them know what was wrong with the sessions. I definitely want to improve my my teaching as best I can. All right. So what did we learn in today's session? We learned about terminal text editors. So terminal text editors are used for word processing in CLI environments. So you're not able to use WordPad. Sorry, you're not able to use Notepad inside of Linux. You have to use terminal text editors like Nano or Vim. The two commonly installed text editors on Linux systems are Nano and Vim. So Nano over here, Vim over here. We also learned about downloading files with wget. So downloading files on Linux is super easy. All you need to do is use the wget command with the file link over here, and you're able to download the file to your current directory, easy peasy. So we learned about managing processes with the ps command. So ps is going to show all of your current processes on the system, and if you have information from the ps command, you can stop any process that is going on your system with the kill command. So when you hear kill command, it sounds kind of aggressive, and I understand why you'd think so, but this is I didn't name the command, they did. All right, so that's the kill command. We learned about networking commands like ifconfig. Ifconfig is used to get your current networking configuration information. For example, the name of your networking interface, or your IP address, or the MAC address of your interface over here. We also learned how to create a simple HTTP server. So we can use Python, a Python module to create an HTTP server on Linux in order to serve everything inside of our current directory to the internet. This is something we can do for local networks only. I'm not saying that it's something we should only use for local networks only, because if we serve this to the general internet, some hacker is going to ruin your day, because the security on the Python-made HTTP servers is not great. And we learned about the netstat command, which can be used to determine our system's active network connections. So over here, if we were to use Python to create a web server, and then we were to use netstat, we would see that that our Python web server is currently active on our system. And lastly, we learned about the most important command in Linux, the sudo command, which lets us run commands as the super user, who is otherwise known as root. So what's next? So this is the final Linux OS operations workshop, and I hope everybody had fun learning about this popular alternative OS to the likes of Windows and Mac OS. So to anybody who's been following along with all the workshops so far, if you have any questions about how to do basically anything inside of Linux, any of the common commands that we used during our workshops, please type in the chat, and I'll try to answer your questions as best I can. I understand that sometimes you can sometimes you have some questions about some commands. I actually recommend very highly, if you have any real questions about how to use certain commands in Linux, that you can certainly use our good friend, the ChatGPT. So chat@openai.com. So the great thing about ChatGPT is that it's going to get you the answer immediately, as opposed to using Google search, which can take a little bit more time as far as searching for the right solution. So if I wanted to learn about creating a new user inside of Linux, I could easily ask ChatGPT this question: in Linux, how do I create a new user? So this is kind of an administration kind of task, and most of the time we don't need to know how to run this command. But let's see. Digital Warhead says explain shell is another. Yes, that is a great command, right? That is a great resource right there. Digital Warhead has provided the link to a great website called explainshell.com, and I will. ChatGPT seems to be stuck. Let's try that again. But let's go over to the resource that Digital Warhead has linked to us. So it's explainshell.com. So explain.shell.com over here is going to show us exactly what is going on inside of any of these really long and complicated Linux commands over here. So if we were to, let's choose one of these at random, maybe this one, and let's copy this, and then let's paste it into the field and hit explain. So it's going to break down this command and all of the different flags and arguments to it. So for example, it says here it's the GNU version of the tar archiving utility. So this is so this particular command is going to, this particular command is usually used to compress and decompress files, but let's see what it has for us over here. So it's going to create a new archive, and it's going to save it to a particular file. So you can see that the flags are provided over here, and it provides a explanation as to what's going on inside of the output over here. All right, that is great. But let's go back to ChatGPT. We asked ChatGPT, in Linux, how do I create a new user? So it gives us the information over here. Usually, when we create a new user, you have to use sudo sudo useradd and then the name of the user. So we can try running through this on my Kali Linux over here. So sudo, what was it again? Useradd test, and that's going to create a new user called test on the system, I think. Let's take a look at the password file where we can usually find usernames on the system. So we see that the test user account was added over here, and it gave us a home directory of home test, and it gave us a default shell of /bin/sh. Okay. All right. So, but what was I saying? So if you want to ask ChatGPT how to do certain things in Linux, it's certainly a great resource. But let's talk about what's going on next for HackerFrogs. So in the next workshop, we're going to be starting a new subject, which is programming. We're going to be embarking on a 2-month-long Python programming course, and you can see more details about this over at our Reddit, which is over at reddit.com/r/HackerFrogs. So I'll provide the link over here, and inside of our Reddit, we have all sorts of links about what's going on as far as the HackerFrogs program is concerned. But let me tell you about the Python programming course that is coming up starting next week. So starting on June 3rd, which is next week on Monday, we're going to be doing a 8-week-long course covering Python programming basics. All sessions will be at the same time that the stream started today, which is 4 p.m. PST and 7 p.m. EST, and it's going to be on the YouTube and Twitch channels. So we're going to be going very slowly and methodically through the Python language. The first session is going to be an introduction to what the language is, and then we're going to do the Hello World program in Python. We're going to be talking at length about the Python print function, and we're going to introduce the concepts of variables and data types, and that's going to be the first session, and it's going to be going on for 8 weeks, and we're going to cover all the basics of how you program in Python. And in later sessions, we're going to be writing up some great example programs to understand the concepts that we're running through, such as how to write functions and how to do programming loops and all sorts of great stuff like that. But lastly, I'd like to point you all to our Linux education resources. Even though this is the final workshop session for Linux OS operations, I'd like to provide everybody with a lot of free resources for learning Linux, which we've compiled from different places on the internet. So let's take a look at some of these links. Just a little overview. This over here, Linux Journey, is a great text-only website for learning about different concepts in Linux. We have a couple of games over here, Linux Survival as well as Terminus. These are some great educational games for learning Linux. And Codecademy is one of my favorite websites for learning about new concepts in programming languages. And they have a bunch of free courses over here that cover Linux. So if you were to go to Codecademy and if you were to search for these particular courses, you could probably access them quite easily. Hack the Box is a great cybersecurity education platform, Hack the Box Academy, rather, and they have a course over there called Linux Fundamentals, which you can essentially get for free, and this is highly recommended for me. I worked my way through this course to see what it taught while I was writing up my Linux OS operations course, and although it's not something I can, it might be something that I incorporate into future versions of this Linux OS operations course from HackerFrogs. If you're really interested in getting really nitty gritty and deep into Linux, I very much recommend this course to you. Let me leave the link for it in chat for everybody. As well, Offensive Security, the makers of Kali Linux, has a course on using Linux over here, which is also listed in the same thread. And I also provide links to a bunch of video courses on YouTube from famous channels such as Free Code Camp and Network Chuck, and Hackersploit. All right. So everybody, we're coming to the end of today's stream, but let me take a look at who's on Twitch right now, because I would love to send you over to another great content creator. We have our good friends Computer Booter. They like to. Karu747 asks, "Oh, they say I didn't know there was a class today." I made a couple of announcements to different channels, but you know what, Karu, you can always watch the VOD for today, and you can pick up on the class through watching the VOD. Digital Warhead also says that it's also worth signing up with a .edu email address, as a lot of these sites usually offer either free or discounted premium memberships. Oh, that's interesting. That's interesting. Thank you very much for that tip, Digital Warhead. Kaoru747 says, I missed it. But you know what? Let's go over to youtube.com. Hold on. So HackerFrogs is also on YouTube. Let's search for my channel name, The Shy Hat. And you can always catch any of our previous lives over here. So I'm going to provide the link to the live VOD for this particular session, and I'll paste it in chat for Karu747. So if you wanted to take a look back at today's VOD, you can always do that. All right. So who is online right now? We have the Computer Booter. Okay, and the Computer Booter is a great channel that does a lot of what is it called, hardware stuff. So they do like hardware modification. If you would like to support the channel, go ahead, and Karu747 says, I'm subscribed to your channel already. Oh, thank you very much for subscribing, Karu747. All right. We're going to send the Twitch the Twitch viewers over there, and I would really much appreciate if you would join in the raid over to there, and we're going to be closing out today's stream. But thank you very much for coming by, everybody, and next week we're going to be starting our Python programming classes. I hope to see you there.